Welcome to The Velvet Verdict, honest conversations about how we drift apart and how we find our way back. I'm Velvet. Let's get into it. It starts in the quiet moments, the ones that happen when the house is settled and the noise of the day has faded. Imagine a man sitting on the edge of the sofa, staring at a screen, feeling a heavy knot of anxiety in his chest. He reaches out to share it, to say, "I'm overwhelmed," but the words get stuck. He worries that if he speaks his fear, he might be seen as weak, or worse, that he's burdening the person he loves. So he stays silent, and that silence builds a wall between them. Across the room, a woman sits with a book, her own heart racing with a different kind of pressure. She feels a deep ache of disconnection, a sense that her inner life is being brushed aside. She wants to talk, to connect, to feel held, but she fears that if she expresses her need, she might be labeled as nagging, or that her vulnerability will be met with a solution rather than a hug. So she stays quiet too, retreating into her own head. They are in the same room, breathing the same air, yet they are miles apart. He is running a race of protection, trying to be the rock that holds everything together, convinced that feeling is a liability. She is running a race of connection, trying to build a bridge of understanding, convinced that distance is a failure. This is the tragedy of modern love, two people who care deeply for each other, yet both feel profoundly alone in the very relationship that should be their refuge. The man feels isolated because his emotions are locked away, and the woman feels isolated because her need to connect goes unheard. It isn't that they don't love each other, it is that they are speaking two different languages of love, and neither knows how to translate. We have all been in this room. We have all felt that strange, hollow distance that grows when we assume our partner knows exactly what we feel, when in reality, we are just guessing. That gap is where the healing begins, not with grand gestures, but with the simple, brave act of saying, "I'm scared," or "I need you." Because until we bridge that silence, we are just two strangers sharing a bed, running our own races, waiting for someone who is too afraid to stop and talk to us. So we are left with this quiet, persistent mystery. Why do men and women, even when they love each other, often feel like they are running different races with different finish lines? It is a systemic issue that creates a profound sense of isolation, not because the love is missing, but because the invisible weight distribution between them is so uneven. We have seen how the data describes the wound. Men carrying the burden of being the sole protector, and women carrying the burden of managing the emotional climate. But when one person is running a race of protection and the other is running a race of connection, they are not running together. They are running parallel lives, waiting for someone who is too afraid to stop and talk to them. This is not a failure of character. It is a failure of the unspoken contract we made with each other. We assumed that love meant we would naturally know what the other needed, that our roles would align without discussion. But in the silence, those roles diverge. The man feels he must be the rock, the unmovable object, and the woman feels she must be the gardener, tending to the soil of the relationship. One is building a fortress, and the other is trying to cultivate a garden inside it. The tragedy is that neither of them realizes the other is fighting a different battle. The man thinks his silence is strength, the woman thinks his distance is rejection. They are both right, from their own perspective, and both terribly wrong about the reality of the other's experience. This is the invisible weight that keeps us isolated, the assumption that we are on the same page when we are actually reading from different books. The healing direction is to recognize that this divergence is not personal. It is the result of societal scripts that told men to hide their vulnerability and told women to carry the emotional load alone. To heal, we must stop trying to win the race and start trying to understand the map of the other person's journey. We have to be brave enough to admit that we are lost, that our roles have drifted, and that we need to recalibrate together. Because until we bridge that silence, we are just two strangers sharing a bed, running our own races, waiting for someone who is too afraid to stop and talk to us. What the data shows, the invisible load, the statistics paint a picture that is startlingly clear, even if it feels uncomfortable to admit. We're not just living in different houses, we are laboring under different weights. The second shift isn't a metaphor, it is a measured reality. In marriages where both partners strive for equality, the numbers still show a distinct imbalance. Wives spend nearly 7 hours a week caring for people in the household, while their husbands spend about 5. More importantly, when we step back to rest, the gap widens. Husbands get back to leisure time averaging over 25 hours a week, while wives get just over 21. This isn't just about who does the dishes. It is about who carries the mental load of running the home. Among dual working parents, the data reveals that more than half say the mother does more of the day-to-day parenting, while only a small fraction say the father does. The division of labor often defaults to gender roles even when both partners are fully employed. Women are overwhelmingly the ones responsible for the rhythm of the week: laundry, cleaning, and meal preparation, while men tend to be the primary point person for the outside world, handling car maintenance and yard work. This creates a silent tax on women's time and energy. They are managing the immediate needs of the family and the home, often at the expense of their own rest. Men, conversely, are granted more unstructured time, which can lead to a disconnect. They are not necessarily absent or uncaring. They are simply operating with a different set of constraints. The man feels he has done his part by providing and fixing the car, while the woman feels she has done hers by ensuring the house runs, yet the scale tips heavily toward her. Recognizing this imbalance is not an attack on men, it is an acknowledgement of a systemic habit that keeps us both exhausted. We have to be brave enough to admit that we are lost, that our roles have drifted, and that we need to recalibrate together. Because until we bridge that silence, we are just two strangers sharing a bed, running our own races, waiting for someone who is too afraid to stop and talk to us. What the data shows, the blurred boundary. The mental load of parenting doesn't just sit at home, it bleeds directly into the workday, leaving many mothers exhausted before they even clock out. For a full-time working mom, the line between professional duties and family responsibilities is often completely erased. In fact, 81% of working moms say they handle parenting tasks while at work, at least sometimes, with nearly 2 out of every 5 doing so extremely or very often. This is starkly different for dads, where only about 17% say the same. The result is that 62% of working mothers find it difficult to balance work and family, a burden significantly heavier than the 47% of working fathers who feel the strain. This isn't just about forgetting a soccer game, it is a fundamental shift in how the day unfolds. Across the board, mothers are the primary schedulers and emotional anchors. 78% of mothers say they do more than their partner to manage their children's schedules and activities, while 58% say they provide the bulk of the comfort and emotional support. It creates a paradox where a man can be fully present at the office, yet his partner is carrying the invisible weight of the home on her shoulders all day long. The fatigue this generates is real and measurable. 47% of mothers report that parenting is tiring all or most of the time, compared with only 34% of fathers. Yet, despite carrying this heavier load, the satisfaction gap is even wider. When asked how satisfied they are with how chores are divided, 49% of dads say they are satisfied, while only 26% of moms feel the same way. This data reveals a quiet crisis of recognition. Men are often satisfied with the status quo because they are not fully aware of the magnitude of the work their partners are doing. They see the done result, but they do not see the exhausting process of holding it all together. For women, the exhaustion is compounded by the feeling that the work is unseen and therefore undervalued. We have to be brave enough to admit that we are lost, that our roles have drifted, and that we need to recalibrate together. Because, until we bridge that silence, we are just two strangers sharing a bed, running our own races, waiting for someone who is too afraid to stop and talk to us. The roots: society's double standard. If we are running different races, it is because the starting blocks were set differently. Society places a unique weight on each of our shoulders, creating a landscape where the same action can mean something entirely different, depending on who does it. This external pressure often creates a silent war within the relationship, where the very efforts we make to be good partners are met with judgment rather than appreciation. Consider the pressure to provide. A staggering 76% of Americans believe men face immense pressure to support their family financially, while that number drops to just 40% for women. For many men, this isn't just a job, it is a measure of their worth. When a man works late or takes on extra hours, he is often doing it to meet a societal mandate that says his value is tied to his paycheck. The stress is real. In 2023, 45% of men reported frequently experiencing stress, a number driven largely by the fear of failing this primary role. Yet, the finish line for women is drawn differently. While men are measured by their wallet, women are measured by their presence. 77% of Americans say women face a lot of pressure to be an involved parent, a standard that feels impossible to meet fully. When a woman tries to balance work and home, she is often accused of not doing enough on either front. The result is visible in our rest. Only 36% of women say they get the sleep they need, compared to 48% of men. Women are expected to be the constant caretaker, the emotional anchor, and the manager of the household, all while managing their own careers and lives. This double standard bleeds into the relationship itself. When a father tries to connect with his kids, 63% of dads say they spend too little time with them, feeling they are falling short of an ideal that exists mostly in the public eye. Meanwhile, mothers are rarely given the same grace for having their own limitations. We are both exhausted, but we are exhausted from carrying different burdens. The man is running a race to prove he is enough. The woman is running a race to prove she is everything. Until we recognize that these different pressures are shaping our behaviors and our frustrations, we will continue to misunderstand the very people we love most. The exhaustion of the primary caregiver is real and heavy, but the man standing beside him or her often carries a specific silent weight of his own, the fear that he is not measuring up. It creates a strange dynamic where the person doing the most labor feels most guilty, while the person who feels less involved feels most inadequate. Data confirms that fathers are far more likely than mothers to feel judged by their spouse for how they parent. In fact, 56% of dads report feeling judged by their partner at least sometimes, compared to 49% of moms. This suggests that the pressure to be the perfect dad can be just as paralyzing as the pressure on women to be the perfect mom, even if the nature of that pressure differs. The roots of this anxiety often go back to how we were raised to seek connection. While men and women are equally likely to lean on a spouse for emotional support, 74% of all adults do, women are significantly more likely to expand that circle. Women turn to friends at more than double the rate of men, 54% versus 38%, and are more likely to confide in their own mothers, 54% versus 42%. For many men, the spouse is not just a partner, but the sole repository of their emotional world. When that person feels overwhelmed, the man often feels like the entire world has collapsed on him. This isolation is compounded by the sheer mechanics of survival. When the pandemic hit, the disparity in who had to step back became stark. Among adults aged 25 to 44 who are not working in the summer of 2020, 32.1% of women stayed home due to childcare, compared to just 12.1% of men. The numbers for mental health reflect this strain. In households with children, 36.9% of mothers reported feeling anxious more than half the days, versus 30.0% of fathers. Yet, despite these statistics, the feeling of being alone in the struggle is profound. A recent report from Making Caring Common found that 51% of mothers with young children reported serious loneliness, a number far exceeding the 36% of all Americans who feel that way. We must see the man behind the silence. He is not lazy. He is often terrified of being the reason the relationship is failing. He is running a race with a different finish line, trying to prove he is enough in a world that tells him he is never quite enough. Healing this fracture means validating the caregiver's burden while simultaneously lifting the lid on the man's quiet desperation. So, where do we go from here? How do we move from this exhausting cycle of running different races to a place where you can actually rest your head and know you are safe? The answer isn't to run faster or to demand the other person change lanes. It is to fundamentally shift how you view the work of the relationship itself. The first step is to move from helping out to owning the task. When a man comes home and sees the house as a mess, his instinct is often to step in and clean it. He thinks he is being helpful, but for the woman, that gesture can feel like a subtle accusation. If you had just done it yourself, you wouldn't have to help me. It invalidates her burden. It suggests that because he is capable, her struggle is somehow unnecessary. The healing direction is to stop the rescue. Let the task sit. Let the dishes pile up. Let the laundry stay in the basket. This is not about being lazy. It is about making space for the caregiver to feel the full weight of the load without the interference of a savior. When a man owns the task, he is not helping her, he is doing his own job. The burden remains hers to carry, and in that ownership, she finally feels seen and validated. She knows that even when things are messy, he is still there, and he is not trying to fix her. Conversely, the woman must learn to give the man permission to fail at the task. If he puts the dishes in the wrong drawer, or hangs a shirt slightly crooked, do not correct him. Do not straighten it. Let it stay. His attempt to contribute is the point, not the perfection of the result. When you stop policing his efforts, you give him the dignity of his own agency. You tell him, I trust you with the job, and I am not going to fix it for you. Finally, you must create a sacred space for recharging. This means that when he comes home, the goal is not to launch into a list of demands or to discuss the state of the house. It is to offer a connection that requires nothing from him. A hug, a glass of water, a moment of silence. Let him decompress before he engages with the world of the home. This is the path forward. He owns the task, you own the space, and neither of you is trying to save the other. In that quiet, unburdened space, the race ends and the relationship can finally begin. If you can give him that moment of silence, you are doing the most powerful thing you can for the connection between you. You are handing him back his dignity, and in doing so, you are inviting him back into your life. This is how the race ends. Not with a winner or a loser, but with two people who finally understand that the finish line wasn't about who did more or who finished first. It was about recognizing that the very different ways you move through the world are not failures of love, but simply the terrain of it. When you stop trying to fix his silence and start honoring it, you heal the isolation that has grown between you. You show him that you see him, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with a complex inner world that deserves space. And when he sees that you see him, the walls come down. The labor of love is invisible, yes. It is the things you do not say, the things you hold back, the moments you give to let the other person breathe, but it is also the foundation of everything that comes after. When the race is over and the tasks are done, that is when the real work begins. That is when you sit down together, not as competitors, but as partners, and you finally talk about the day, not the to-do list. Healing starts with a small shift in perspective. It starts with trusting that the other person is trying their best, and that their best is enough. It starts with the quiet confidence that you do not need to save each other. You just need to stay close. The door is open. The space is clear. The moment is yours. This episode was written by a human with the help of AI. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and please tell a friend. If you have a positive comment, please post it. We would love to read them and see if we are helping anyone. And if you have positive feedback, we would like to hear that as well. Thank you, everyone. God bless. See you in the next one.